Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, wanted to hop on real quick before we get into today's episode and let you know two things from us here at Fasting for Life. One is the holidays are upon us, and that means our final 7-day fasting lifestyle challenge is right around the corner. That is right. Thanksgiving is here. Christmas is just in the future, and our challenge that starts on December 7th through the 13th is strategically placed to help you not only lose weight during the holidays, but end your 2022 year strong and start 2023 with massive momentum. The second update is that we are running a discounted challenge registration for Black Friday. It ends at Friday at midnight. If you go to the show notes and click the link, you will see that we have 3 different levels of access. You have a challenge replay, DIY option. We have the challenge registration that is now going live as you hearing this message for the December 7th challenge. And then we have a bundle option as well if you want to get a head start before that challenge date on December 7th. And if you are ready to rock and roll, then we are here to support you and help you along that journey. So with that being said, go to the show notes, check it out, thefastingforlife.com/Black Friday. And now onto today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Today is the day that we get to talk about hormones. Don't worry, we got a little bit for the women, we got a little bit for the men, and then we've got things that all of us can do to make sure that we are having a healthy journey with our weight loss. And today is going to be focused on balancing some of those key important hormones. And I will just put this out here today, Tommy, that when we first saw this study, we were kind of a little taken aback. It was like, hormonal changes from intermittent fasting. It's a review of 7 studies that reported intermittent fasting can decrease androgens and increase sex hormone binding protein in women. Wait a minute. Is that a good thing? We'll let you know. And intermittent fasting also appeared to decrease testosterone in men. But the participants lost body weight in every study. And is that important? And is the juice worth the squeeze? So with that introduction, we'll be back to that in just a second. I want to welcome all the new listeners in. Welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. If you want to learn more about our journey with the fasting lifestyle and how we ended up starting a podcast and doing challenges and having coaching, etc., you want to hear our personal story, we'd love to share it with you because that is the first thing that we did on this journey was start talking about fasting. So head back to the first couple of episodes, listen. If you want to listen to episode 0 and episode 1, we would really appreciate that. And for all of you long-term listeners that tune in week to week, we really appreciate you guys and your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews. Feel free to leave us one. We prefer the 5-star kind, of course.
Absolutely.
But we love that feedback because then that tells the podcast people in control, whatever that looks like, that technology, that web, wherever that goes, it tells that we're doing something good and adding value to the podcast world. So welcome in new listeners, hashtag OGs, the ones that have been with us for a while, if you know what that means. Appreciate you guys as well. And Tommy, let's hop into the framework for today on hormonal changes from intermittent fasting. So these studies, there were 7 that came out of this study summary. And in the past, we've talked about, intermittent fasting and the benefit on cardiometabolic markers and metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance and weight loss resistance. And because the idea here is that if we're going to adopt a lifestyle and not a diet, right? Not using fasting as a diet just to lose the weight, but as an actual lifestyle, then what's the purpose? Why are we doing it? Well, we want to increase our health, our quality of life, decrease the needs for medications and surgeries and ending up, just wasting away as our life goes on into the later decades. We want to gain our health, gain our confidence, keep the weight off, be metabolically healthy, right?
Right.
So the starting point for these 7 studies was really cool because it looked at men, women, looked at time restricted feeding, it looked at 5-2 diet, it looked kind of a quasi fasting window, right? Calories early or calories late, which we just did a podcast episode on recently. I think it was episode 151, where we looked at the different times of when you consume the food and did it really matter. So a few things here, men and women. We're going to start with the women. We're going to go to the men and then go to the big takeaways.
Yeah, and we kind of look at hormone levels, not that there is like one single perfect number for any individual. However, when we're looking at overall balance, we can tell if we're kind of on the right track, if we're getting more towards a hormonal balance versus we start to see issues pop up, symptoms, or maybe even a diagnosis when certain hormone levels get too out of whack. And so we want to know if we're working on, getting the body weight off, let's say, or, using fasting as a tool and as a lifestyle, is that moving us closer in the right direction or farther away, right?
That is a perfect simplification because I already felt myself getting a little caught up in all the logistics of the studies, right?
Sure.
So let's start with this starting point that the biggest converter. So we're going to talk about androgens, sex hormone binding globulin. We're going to talk a little bit about estrogen, PCOS in women. And then we're going to talk about testosterone, which for you ladies is also important, especially as you go through perimenopause into menopause, to be able to maintain a healthy body mass or a lean body mass, right? Which is going to be an indicator of overall health. It's going to decrease your chance of diabetes, blood sugar related conditions, et cetera, all of the cardiometabolic issues that I already mentioned. So
also just, quality of life, how you feel, as well as bone density and, other important health markers for sure, especially as we age.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So if we're looking at hormones, right, and we're going to start here with these studies, and it suggested that in women, IF can decrease androgens and increase sex hormone binding globulin. What is that? Well, that's a hormone that transports other hormones to their target tissues. So it's kind of like a little transporter, right? And this looked at concentrations in premenopausal women and those with PCOS, okay, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And in that condition, it's characterized by higher than normal levels of androgens and low levels of that binding globulin, right?
Right, yeah.
So the cool thing here is we saw an increase in the good one, the sex hormone binding globulin, and we saw a decrease in the androgens that are associated with PCOS. But the fasting did not appear to influence other reproductive hormones, such as estrogen, gonadotropins, and prolactin, right? Yeah. Which is what we want. We want balance. We want these hunger signals and these hormone levels to balance so our body can function properly. We can lose the weight and keep it off for good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's right along with what we hear oftentimes with emails coming to the inbox and other testimonials coming through going, I've been suffering with PCOS for a long time. Regardless of how many pounds, an individual had to lose, PCOS can pop up in healthy weight individuals and overweight and obese individuals as well. Right. But we've seen so much balancing and so many really cool, almost like when they're writing in, it feels like a miraculous success story. I've been trying to have a kid for so long, finally got things balanced out, after a lot of intentional fasting and things like that.
Yeah, and those food choices, all of the things that come along with that. But we are by no means are PCOS experts. There's different forms of PCOS. There's different hormonal dominances shown in PCOS. We're just talking broad strokes here, right? When you have low serum binding globulin levels, right? It's a biomarker of abnormal metabolism and directly related to insulin resistance, which is the gatekeeper of burning fat, which makes the more insulin resistance you have, the harder it is to tap into those fat stores and lose the weight. You can also call it weight loss resistance. You've got compensatory hyperinsulinemia, right? High levels of insulin again, abnormalities in blood sugar regulation and lipid metabolism, right? So you're going to see lipid profiles and cholesterol profiles being off. And the binding globulin is also associated with the long-term prognosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. So when we're looking at this, that's one of the leading causes of infertility in childbearing age females.
Right.
And it's characterized by the altered hormonal profile, right? So you're going to have androgen excess and insulin resistance, which is going to lead to the decrease in the ovulation rate and the fertility, right? So
Yeah.
the starting point here is the biggest converter of testosterone into estrogen and in the body is that body fat component, right? So
Yeah.
when we're talking specifically about PCOS, we really want to make sure that we can get the weight off while we're balancing this process as we go, right? So
Yeah.
if you have hypothyroidism, if you have Cushing syndrome, type 2 diabetes, we've already mentioned insulin resistance a few times, or PCOS, then that means your sex hormone binding globulin levels are low.
Right.
Now, it's not the only marker, right? So again, not PCOS experts, but it is one of the key markers that are low in those situations. And the takeaway from the study is, well, you're going to see the opposite of that happen, right?
Yeah.
You're going to see androgens,
It's balance.
yes, come down and binding globulin go up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens, over time as we see the weight come down, right? And the insulin resistance come down. So like that's part of the balancing equation too, but it's not all one-to-one correlated with just the weight. But the cool thing is that even before the scale has moved substantially, we can still see evidence of that balancing happening. Like in a study like this, that's maybe somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks. It's not necessarily going out 6 months to look at a 30, 40, 50 pound weight loss, before seeing some evidence of balancing happening. So that's really, really cool and encouraging.
Couple more things here before we move on to the testosterone portion is I love the fact that in these 3 studies in women, it did not appear to influence other reproductive hormones like estrogen, gonadotropins, and prolactin, which is really great. Now, there was an interesting thing that came out of one of the studies that said eating more than 50% of your calories at dinner can increase estrogen levels. So if you have an estrogen dominance and you don't want that in your situation, then you could simply move that time-restricted eating window to the morning and see how you feel for a few weeks, right?
Yeah. It's definitely easier to process a lot of food or more of the calories, especially more of the carbohydrate rich ones earlier in the day, right? With less of a compensatory response in the insulin levels that's all like leading in the right direction too.
Yeah. Now, one thing to consider here, so this is a caveat, hyperthyroidism, pituitary problems, or Addison's disease, you're going to want to talk to your healthcare provider, because if what this study is showing to be true, then if you fast the way that these people fast in these studies, right? So it was time restricted feeding. It was like an 8-hour window. There was one person, the small sample, one study on the 5-2 diet, right? So 5 days of normal consumption, 2 days of fasting, and then that 50-50 split in the morning versus the evening. You're probably going to want to be a little bit more considering of a more open fasting window or a 2 meal a day type approach in the beginning, because the sex hormone binding globulin levels, if they are high, we don't want to elevate them even more if you have the hyperthyroidism, pituitary problems, or the Addison's disease. So just one caveat from that original study. So overall benefit with this takeaway, especially for the PCOS application, is you're going to decrease the androgens or the male sex hormones. You're going to increase the sex hormone binding globulin, which is a positive. So where we started with this conversation, Tommy, was kind of the smack in the face from reading the title, right? It's like, all right, well, intermittent fasting decrease, is that a good thing? Is that a good thing? Yes, check. Okay, good.
Right.
So now here's the second part. Intermittent fasting can also appear to decrease testosterone in men, but the participants lost body weight in every study. So the biggest converter of testosterone into estrogen in the body is body fat, right?
Yeah. The increase in adipose tissue is associated with the increase in aromatase that converts the testosterone to the estradiol, and that leads to diminished testosterone levels. And then here's the kicker, as if that wasn't bad enough. The kicker is that leads to preferential deposition of visceral body fat, the enemy, the key marker for all of the negative health outcomes that we want to avoid and we want to reverse, right? So literally we're having this conversion from testosterone into estrogen and higher deposition of visceral body fat. Terrible process.
And as the total body fat mass increases, hormone resistance develops, right? So never mind insulin resistance, but you also got the leptin resistance, right? Telling your body whether you're in hunger, whether you're full, right? It's like, okay. So now we've got some imbalance, right? And we want to obviously work towards
Huge.
balance. So one other study that we want to mention here before we totally unpack the testosterone piece, because you found some interesting things in the studies and the demographics of the men that were studied.
Mhm.
And then we're going to give you some things you can do to boost testosterone naturally and also incorporate into your fasting journey that can apply to both men and women. But there was a study that showed the androgen deficiency in men and androgen excess in women are directly associated with that metabolic syndrome and the type 2 diabetes. So again, what's the biggest needle mover here? Get the weight off.
Right.
Where does fasting come into play? Well, it is the easiest way to get into a caloric restriction and the best way that we've found to create simplicity and balance and confidence and get the scale moving, even when, maybe you've been stuck or you've been at a plateau or you've lost the weight and it's come back. Well,
yeah.
In that situation, you haven't truly adopted the fasting lifestyle. You've probably been using it more like a diet, which I've done in the past. When I did keto and an IF, I was using it to lose weight. I wasn't using it to the full fasting potential.
So where you got to the finish line, and then you said, I'm done with you. I don't need you anymore, right? I had the tool that worked. Now I'm done, right?
Yep. And if you guys are looking for some of these studies, they'll all be in the show notes as well. There's going to be a lot of them for this one. So they will all be there if you're looking for one that we specifically mentioned. So Tommy, let's unpack this testosterone thing a little bit, right? So we don't want decreased testosterone.
Sure.
Okay. We want lean body mass. We want lean body tissue. Okay. The study shows that there was a decrease, right? One of them was 1%. And then what other interesting things did you find?
Yeah, there was one that was as high as 27% decrease in testosterone. But before you throw intermittent fasting out the window, it's good to note that that was in an average of 19-year-old males trained for elite cycling. Okay, so
me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, right? Yeah, exactly. So, for mere mortals, it's not necessarily applicable because that individual group did have, higher levels of testosterone than you or I probably have right now. So elite cyclists, also resistance trained men. Several of these studies were using very lean individuals. They weren't looking to lose any body fat. They probably didn't have much to lose to begin with. So it's an important consideration because the variability there doesn't necessarily translate to real life for us mere mortals, but it can be kind of one of those, just kind of a headline. It can get headline attraction, intermittent fasting shown to decrease testosterone, that kind of thing. So important to understand, some of the specifics there for the patient populations.
Yeah. So all 4 studies, young, lean, and physically active. That wasn't me when I was 50 pounds overweight and insulin resistant and feeling stuck. Okay. Right. And the cool thing is all of these studies, regardless, did not change the sex hormone binding globulin or muscle mass or strength in men.
Yeah.
So it didn't change your muscle mass. It didn't change your strength, and it didn't mess with your SHBG. And they all lost weight. Nice. So the biggest converter of testosterone into estrogen is body fat. We need to get the weight off, right? So interesting you said that one of them showed a 26%, and that was in that small demographic of like super elite military cyclists, right? So I know I took a little liberty there, but a couple of things we're going to talk about here. First of all is walking. So is walking part of your fasting /health/weight loss journey? We talk a lot about how powerful walking is, right? Post-prandial, post-meal in blunting the blood sugar spike and allowing your body to process and allow your insulin to work, more efficiently, right? So there was a cool study specifically for the men to show that good old-fashioned walking, association of daily step count and serum testosterone among men in the United States. This came out in January in 2021. Okay. And this is Journal of the Endocrine Journal, right? So men who walked 8,000 steps per day have significantly lower odds of having low testosterone compared to men who just walk 4,000 steps per day.
Nice.
So it wasn't powered to detect the direction of causality, i.e. meaning does walking increase testosterone or do men with higher testosterone simply walk more?
Sure.
But the work in this study supports that association between daily step count and testosterone levels and the risk of hypogonadism, meaning that low testosterone level or decrease in androgens. So we've been saying this for a while. Walking is like, you don't need to be running and lifting weights 7 days a week and doing all these high intense work. We need to simplify this for long-term sustainability. I mean, I'm going to take a liberty here and say, yeah, it's probably going to work for women too. Right?
Yeah, it's just part of that balance. Also part of peeling back some of those layers of the insulin resistance and getting things, back to where they need to be. I mean, and the cool thing is we don't have to do a whole lot to see these little increases, these little protective mechanisms, like 30 minutes of weight training is, a temporary boost in testosterone levels up to 20%. But after a few weeks of doing that becomes sustained, where you have higher baseline levels for multiple weeks afterwards. So, the fact that there are little things that we can do, and that we should understand that a sedentary lifestyle, a completely sedentary lifestyle, is definitely associated with lower testosterone levels.
Right.
And as the body weight, the body fat percentage comes up, then that correlation just gets stronger and stronger, with lower levels of testosterone, with more excess body weight, because you have that aromatization, that testosterone converting into estrogen. It's like the body's trying to fight an uphill battle at that point. So a little bit of change in habits goes a long way to start to correct that, for sure.
Yeah. So we'd say, get your steps in, right? And this is a little different take than we had when we told you about where the actual, back in the day when we did the
10,000 steps to nowhere.
10,000 steps to nowhere episode, right?
Yeah.
Now, 10,000 not needed, right? 8,000, good. Let's shoot for that. Okay. Consistency over time. But, that whole thing, it came out of a marketing campaign. I believe it was in Japan, if I'm stoking my memory right.
Yeah.
Where it was just like a number they picked, and all of a sudden it got adopted. And now everybody's like, oh, I got to get my 10,000 steps in, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there's another study that either we've done an episode or we're going to do it on. So appreciate some grace here. I can't remember. After 150 of them, luckily we have a good index system. It's like, oh, wait, let's search this. Okay, we haven't talked about this research article yet. All right.
Yeah.
So in this meta-analysis, a daily step count of 7,000 to 9,000 was associated with the lowest risk of all-cause mortality. So what's between 7 and 9? 8.
Yep.
I love it. Okay. And the number of steps that maximally reduced all-cause mortality was different in different subgroups, but that range is what got you the best results. So we're worried about the starting point for today. Oh my God, decreased testosterone. Okay, well, let's look a little bit closer. What's the quickest way that testosterone gets converted into estrogen? Well, that's by the body fat. How do we decrease the insulin response? How do we increase our testosterone? Well, simply by adding in walking. Okay, 8,000 steps post-meal is the best way to help blunt that blood sugar spike as well. Well, let's
get you out of the kitchen too.
Yeah, it gets you out of the revolving pantry door, right?
Yeah, helps you set that timer and get the heck out of the kitchen, right?
Yeah. So a few other things you can do, Tommy. Let's just maximize some testosterone levels to make sure that you are, simple things you can do. We're not talking about massive lifestyle overhauls here. Direct sunlight 2 to 3 times per week can increase testosterone by 69%.
Okay.
30 minutes. 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, not bad.
Simple.
Oh, wait, I'm walking. Great.
Right. Get outside.
You already mentioned this. Resistance training. Never mind the additional benefits of sunlight on sleep, right? Which is huge.
Of course. Yeah.
Resistance training, right? You had mentioned that. 1 30-minute session can increase T levels by almost 22%. And that's 3 times a week. After 4 weeks, those levels were maintained.
It's awesome. Yeah. You don't have to be a gym rat. You don't have to be in there every single day. You don't have to be in there for an hour and a half, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Avoid the refined sugars, right? Consuming refined sugars can reduce testosterone by 25%. Make sure you're getting 7 hours of sleep, right? So less than 7 hours of sleep have shown to decrease those testosterone levels considerably. Alcohol, again, that's going to reduce testosterone synthesis. So making sure
lead to sleep disturbances.
To sleep disturbances. Connection points here, right?
Yep.
And then a few dietary things that we can do here is eat more healthy fats.
Absolutely.
Reduce the processed carbs. And you can also increase your zinc intake. So either through foods or through supplementation. Again, though, this is all stuff that's part of adopting a lifestyle that's going to lead to sustainability, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Also not being completely restricted from carbohydrates either. Because that's not necessarily a good thing. And Because if the body can't find the right substrate, the right chemicals, the right bonds, the right atoms that it needs to produce, like a complex hormone molecule,
Right.
then things all of a sudden they start to drop because it doesn't have the required things to actually do that. So not being overly restricted, especially on the carbohydrate side, means that we can reduce some of the stress on the HPA axis, which could also lead to sleep disturbances and things like that. So again, like a matter of the balance points, the larger balance points that lead to improvements over time.
Yeah, and just a couple last talking points here. So if you're thinking like, well, I don't even know where to start, right? Okay, just start with walking. Or if you're already working out, like a simple way to look at just a basic workout. I mean, first of all, go to YouTube, right? Because that's just a plethora of, there's more, just your age, your demographic, what you're looking to do, boom, right? 30 minutes, three times a week. That's it, right?
Yeah.
A little 5-minute warm up, couple of compound exercises, some resistance bands, couple of free weights, maybe, some core work, maybe a light walk or stretch, and then a cool down, and you're done within 30 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I would say to kind of wrap up today's conversation, Tommy, would be just make sure that we're also focusing, we mentioned fats, but also you're focusing on that consumption of quality protein too, right?
Sure.
So just make sure you're getting in your protein sources, focus on the protein and the fat, keep the refined processed carbs low, and then also make sure that you're not totally restricting and just hating your life when it comes to mealtime. Because you can do the fast, but it's what happens during that nutrition opportunity that really matters too.
Yeah. That's what's going to make it or break it for the sustainability portion as well. Because what I took away from this conversation today is that overall to get moving in the right direction, we're going to need to get the dang weight off. Like you're going to hear us always say that, right? But in order to do that, I need to find the things that are working. So do more of the things that are working, starting with the fast. And then what do I do whenever I break my fast as well? So, keeping consistently in it to win it and keep doing what's actually moving the needle and getting the weight off means that's leading to the testosterone, the estrogen balance, the insulin resistance coming down. And overall, I'm building habits that I'll be able to use to actually sustain for the long term rather than treating this like a diet, right?
1,000%. And that's actually why we created the community group that we have on Facebook, right? So a couple of things that you can do coming out of today's conversation. If you're new and you're feeling like, what do I do now? Okay, 2 things. 1, you can go to the show notes. You can go and find the Fasting for Life community link. So this is a Facebook group that we've created where it is all listeners of the show. And it is a really cool environment because I've been in all the other environments out there, right? The intermittent fasting for men groups and the other ones. And there's a lot of sideways energy in those groups sometimes. And we wanted to create an environment where we can talk all things fasting and be in an encouraging, uplifting, no silly questions. Like it is a supportive place. So if you're new, come find us. And the second thing you can do is download the Fast Start Guide at thefastingforlife.com or thefastingforlife.com. You can go to the resources tab and it's a Fast Start Guide on how to put 1 meal a day fasting. If you've been doing intermittent fasting, hasn't been working, you want to get back on track, you want to up your fasting game, that resource is there for you. It comes with a group of videos or a little mini masterclass that we recorded walking you through in 3 or 4 minutes of each one of those 6 simple steps. And then the last thing I will mention, Tommy, is the last challenge of the year is coming up on December 7th. We promised you 8 this year, okay?
Yep.
We had a ton of people that missed it or didn't take action due to Thanksgiving, due to November, due to Halloween, because we ran it over the end of October into November, right?
Yeah.
So we have the last one of the year, and we got some big changes coming up for 2023. I can't believe that just came out of my mouth. So go to the show notes, click the link. More information on the challenge, the last challenge of 2022, December 7th. It'll bring you to the registration page. It has all the information on what we do, frequently asked questions, etc. Come find the community group if you want some more support on your fasting journey, Tommy. And I think that's all I got for today, sir.
Yeah, I just, it's going to be an awesome end of the year. So be thinking about how you want to end this year right now, because how 2023 is going to go is being baked in right now for sure. Now. So you want to break through a plateau. You want to, make the habits stick, like come with us. It's going to be a cool challenge. And just keep finding the things that help you do better and stay more consistently so you can keep winning over time. So make it a great year.
Love it. Appreciate you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Cool. Thanks. See ya.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.